What does it mean to be family? Personally, the concept of family isn't as black and white as being blood related to somebody, but rather being close enough with someone or a group of people where you feel close enough to them to consider each other bound by blood. And this feels especially more common these days with how blood-related families can be broken apart for reasons such as conflicting ideals with one another. To me, the concept of family/family members working off of each other to experience major character development is a major factor in the grand scheme of the Owl House. Today I'm going to be going over the major family structures in the Owl House that I felt gave certain characters major/gradual over time development to themselves as well as the story overall. The groups and or pairings I'll be going over are Luz and her birth mother Camilla, Luz and Eda, Amity and her parents, and of course Eda and Lilith. But before we get into that, I've noticed for a good while that the majority of the people who watch my videos aren't actually subscribed to my channel, so if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot more than you might think, and you'll be able to find my videos way easier than before. All the way back to the very first episode of the Owl House, the audience is able to tell Luz and her mother don't see completely eye to eye. They don't argue or yell at each other when they have a disagreement, but there's definitely tension there. Luz is a very quirky, nerdy girl who had a lot of trouble fitting in with kids her age at school. This overactive imagination of hers not only made it hard for her to make friends, but got her in trouble with the teachers a lot as well. Her mother, being worried her daughter doesn't know how to separate fantasy from reality, thinks it would be best to send her daughter to reality check summer camp for 3 months so she can make some real friends. Of course, Luz doesn't want to go because it would mean completely straying away from the things she loves most, but she's afraid of standing up to her mother. Camilla isn't necessarily in the wrong here. I definitely believe she wants what's best for her daughter, but trying to send her to basically a brainwash camp probably wasn't the best idea. Couldn't a potential school transfer have worked? Maybe a different school in the district could have been an option? I don't know. At the same time though, if it wasn't for Camilla making Luz wait for that camp bus, she would have never found the Boiling Isles and met Eda, so it was a blessing in disguise at the end of the day. Throughout the rest of season 1, Luz continues to struggle to be honest with her mother. Every now and then Luz would get texts from her mother asking how she was doing at camp. Luz would always give very vague responses to these questions, usually in the form of emojis. This fear of her mother's confrontation was explored most in depth in the episode Enchanting Gromfright. Grom is a being that lives under Hexside that needs to be defeated once a year by one of the students before it can invade the Isles. It's able to shapeshift into a person's worst fear. Since Luz took Amity's place as Grom Queen, she had to take on the task of defeating the Grom monster. During their battle, it shapeshifted into Camilla, walking through the portal to confront Luz about staying on the Boiling Isles instead of camp. I had shivers down my spine when I watched this episode during my season 1 binge. Even though it wasn't really explored until then, this fear was looming over Luz ever since she decided to stay with Eda. To have that fear practically become real was surely gut-wrenching for Luz. Thankfully, by the end of the episode, with the support of Amity, that both of them were able to conquer their fears and defeat Grom. By the end of the episode, she's able to text her mom more specific responses about how things are going at quote-unquote camp, even though she feels like she doesn't belong sometimes. When things get tough, her friends always come through. And she ends that text vowing she'll tell her mom all about the Boiling Isles one day. At the time of watching this episode, I didn't think she would be telling her mother about the existence of the Boiling Isles by the end of season 1, but given how the season 1 finale went, Luz didn't have much of a choice. Because Luz destroyed the portal to Earth in order to prevent Emperor Belos's plans, she had more of a reason to tell her mother sooner rather than later, since she was essentially trapped on the Isles now. I think it's safe to believe that Luz truly was going to tell her mother anyway, given how the Grom episode ended though, which was a very big step for her character. One of the biggest in all of season 1 for Luz in my opinion. It's definitely going to be an interesting time when we eventually get the episode where we see Camilla's real reaction to Luz being on the Boiling Isles. Up next is Luz and Eda. The mentor-apprentice relationship these two have is one of my favorite mentor-apprentice relationships in all of fiction, real talk. What started as Eda mainly keeping Luz around to help with her chores and run errands turned into a borderline equivalent of a loving mother-daughter-esque relationship. From the get-go, Luz was incredibly intrigued by Eda because Eda's a witch. Magic/fantasy were Luz's favorite things in the world, so it was a very easy choice for her to stay in the Boiling Isles until she mastered magic. Eda, on the other hand, while she did like Luz, gradually valued Luz more as a person with each passing episode. Eda was a lot like Luz when they were both the same age. Neither of them really fit in at school and were always getting into trouble due to their wild/overactive imaginations. Present-day Eda's personality is more or less how Luz would act when she turns 40-ish, I think. Eda begins to realize this more and more over time. For instance, in the episode The Intruder, Luz is able to learn magic through glyphs without Eda even giving her a full lesson. By the end of this episode, she decides taking her job as a witch mentor to Luz much more seriously. By the end of season 1, Eda is able to sacrifice herself to Emperor Belos in order to save Luz. This is the woman who wanted to be free to do her own thing more than anything, and she was willing to set that aside if it meant her apprentice was safe. I don't think episode 1 Eda would have done that, to be honest. Even just the little things like being super grossed out by hugs, then hugging Luz normally by the end of the season. You know, Luz had such an immense impact on Eda's life. Although they're not blood related, I'm sure they both consider each other family at this point in time. Next up is Amity Blight's toxic relationship with her parents, and to some extent her older siblings, Edric and Emra. When it comes to what us viewers know about the Blight parents, they're your typical high society scum. They only want to be associated with other rich/powerful families, and they apply this terrible mindset to their children as well, mainly Amity as far as we know. It was revealed in the episode Understanding Willow that Amity's parents forced Amity to break up her friendship with Willow. Due to Willow being a late bloomer when it came to her magical skill, the Blight parents didn't want Amity to be friends with somebody they considered a weakling. Don't worry, Willow, I know you're strong as hell. Deep down, Amity knew treating Willow like nothing was terrible too, but she was afraid of her parents' blackmail. These people threatened to make sure Willow doesn't get in the hex side if they stayed friends. If it wasn't for she and Luz going into Willow's mind to realize how much Willow had been hurting all this time, I'm not sure if they would have became friends again, at least during this season. As for Ed and Em, there's not a whole lot to go over since they've only had major roles in, 2 episodes so far, I think? They're the typical troublemaker older siblings that get joy out of their younger siblings' misery. However, since the prank from the Lost in Language episode resulted in Amity nearly getting killed, the two of them seem to be acting kinder towards her from here on out, especially in the episode Adventures in Elements, where they're both putting in an effort to teach Amity a new spell so she could score a higher average than they did during their admissions test to Hexside. I'm really hoping to see more of the Blight family dynamic in season 2, especially the parents. We already kind of know what they look like because they were shown in Lilith's flashback, but I want to see them physically appear full-blown with a significant role in an episode. That'll be hype. And lastly, let's talk about Sasuke and Itachi. My mistake, Eda and Lilith. Growing up, these two were the best of friends. Lilith was a very caring big sister towards Eda, like if Eda got hurt while Lilith was around, Lilith would use a spell so they could share the pain together. What drove these two apart was Lilith's obsession to join the Emperor's Coven. Both Eda and Lilith wanted to join the Coven, but there was only one spot left in tryouts. Because of how threatened Lilith was of Eda's magical abilities, she cursed her so she would lose the duel. Eda forfeited anyway since she didn't want to be bound to a coven her whole life, but this didn't undo the curse. Eda was still majorly outcast because of this monstrous form, and the curse was permanent rather than temporary, like Lilith thought. Throughout the years, Lilith and Eda grew apart mainly due to Lilith constantly trying to force Eda into the coven so she wouldn't be a wanted witch anymore and the Emperor could heal her curse. Eda never thought it was worth it though because of how significantly different she and the Emperor's ideals were. During Lilith's appearances prior to Agony of a Witch, even though Eda was annoyed by Lilith's insistency of trying to get her into the coven, she still cared for her deep down. However, once Eda found out Lilith was the one who cursed her, all her care went out the window. Her big sister, who she was best friends with and looked up to when they were kids, cursed her all so she could join a coven. She was even willing to put Luz in harm's way if it meant getting Eda to join. Even though Eda didn't know it yet, this was all so Eda could be healed so Lilith could undo/atone for the terrible mistake she had done all those years ago. She never intended for it to be permanent, but this is what can happen when you let a lust for power overcome you. I'm very glad Lilith has began a proper path to redemption by sharing this curse she gave her sister rather than having Eda deal with the entire thing herself. It's going to be such a great treat seeing these two try to learn magic all over again since they're basically powerless now. I'm curious how long it's going to take before they're back to their normal selves. We still don't know the specific effects of this shared curse, but I'm sure Season 2 will go more in depth. Can we just get a release date for Season 2 already, please? Like, now that I'm caught up, waiting blows ass. It'll high-key be worth the wait, though. And I want to quickly apologize for sleeping on this series for as long as I did. After being fully caught up, I definitely regret not being caught up from the get-go so I could enjoy these episodes live with my other content creator pals. You'll live and learn, though. Be sure to leave a like down below if you enjoyed this video. It helps out a lot. And another reminder to subscribe to stay as updated as possible. And for now, I will see you guys next time. Peace out. Take care. Bye-bye.